You already know more than you realize, but you just don't know how to read the signs yet, because every person leaves clues, and Nietzsche's 18 truths will teach you how to find them and what they mean. This is the skill that nobody teaches you. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. However, this film is not a superficial list or piece of advice. Rather, it's a comprehensive dissection divided into 3 potent sections, each building upon the one before. If you skip ahead or miss one, you will lose the depth that makes this truly work. So stay with me, because by the end of all 3 parts, you will not only understand others, but also yourself in ways you never expected. From a young age, you are taught to trust what people say. Words are our currency. However, Nietzsche cautioned us not to be deceived by language, since people speak from survival, from ego, and from fear, not from truth. The surface of someone's personality is not them, it is their arm. The person who appears to be overly kind may be terrified of rejection, while the one who seems to be strong may be crumbling underneath, hoping that no one notices. The most deceptive aspect of humans is that they are unaware that they are doing it. Most people are actors in a play that they did not write. Their smiles, opinions, and tone are all shaped by what kept them safe. As Nietzsche once said, every profound spirit needs a mask. But he meant it as a warning to not mistake the mask for the person, not as an insult. Here's what no one tells you. People leak the truth all the time, not in their words, but in the cracks. The moments when they look away, the way they laugh too long, the way they swiftly change the subject when it gets too close. And Nietzsche's first psychological truth is this: everyone wears a mask to survive, not because they're fake, but because they're afraid to live in society. People create a version of themselves that they hope will be accepted, but masks aren't perfect. They slip, and the first sign of truth is tension. Watch for what makes someone uncomfortable. That's where the real person begins. 2. What someone hates in others reveals what they're hiding in themselves. This is one of Nietzsche's sharpest insights: projection. People who are constantly making fun of arrogance are often insecure about their own self-worth. People who can't stop pointing out dishonesty in others are usually hiding a truth they haven't faced. We hate in others, but we're afraid to admit in ourselves. So, when you want to read someone, don't just look at what they admire. Look at what they criticize and why. 3. Silence speaks louder than words. NZ didn't think truth came from talking. Rather, he saw language as a tool of the herd, frequently used to avoid confronting reality. When someone pauses before responding, when they avoid certain topics, when they give short, rehearsed answers to deep questions, that silence speaks volumes. A person avoiding vulnerability is revealing everything about what they fear. 4. Excessive virtue is frequently disguised vanity. Be wary of those who loudly proclaim their purity, those who are always correcting others, and those who are always preaching. NZE referred to this as the will to power in disguise. Sometimes morality becomes a mask for superiority. The louder the virtue signal, the more likely there is something being hidden behind it. Real goodness doesn't need applause. 5. People don't lie to you first, they lie to themselves. This one changes everything. The lies you hear from people: I'm fine, I'm over it, I don't care, aren't lies to hurt you. They're lies they've rehearsed so often that they believe them. Nix understood self-deception not as evil but as defense, a way to keep functioning in a painful world. So when someone's story doesn't quite add up, don't assume they're trying to deceive you. Realize they've been doing it to themselves far longer, and that's what makes reading them possible, because the inconsistencies reveal the truth. 6. Someone is hiding inferiority wherever they feel superior. This is pure Nixa. He believed that superiority is often overcompensation. If someone constantly reminds you of their accomplishments, they likely fear they're not enough. If someone puts others down casually, they're probably terrified of being overlooked. Real confidence doesn't compete, it just is. Therefore, if someone needs to dominate, control, or prove, look deeper behind the throne. You'll often find a scared child wearing a crown. Reading people isn't about judging them, it's about understanding their core. When someone interrupts constantly, you now know that it's not always arrogance. It might be fear of being forgotten. When someone posts obsessively about happiness, it may be a cry for help. When someone avoids eye contact while saying, I'm fine, I'm over it, I don't care, it Could be because they are hiding something. You know to read the body rather than the words, and use these truths not to gain power over others, but to extend compassion. Since the clearer you see someone, the less likely you are to hate them. This is Nietzsche's secret. He didn't want you to see through others, so you could control them. He wanted you to see through them, so you could stop being fooled and start connecting. If you've ever noticed that you're only seeing the surface of someone and wished you could understand what's really going on beneath the mask, leave a comment below, and let's discuss the times when people have shown you the truth without saying a word. If this video has helped you see people differently, subscribe there. There's much more to come, and you'll want to see the rest of Nietzsche's truths unfold. It's one thing to see the mask, but it's quite another to watch it crack. If you've ever paid attention, you've probably noticed it. The nervous laugh that doesn't fit the words, the way their tone changes when the topic gets too near, and the flash of unease are all signs that people aren't hard to read. They're simply afraid to be seen. Nietzsche believed that the self is not a stable thing, but rather a stitched-together roll designed to survive the world, and that the truth leaks out the moment it is threatened. Let's start here because it's more universal than you think. 7 most actions are motivated by unconscious fear. Ask yourself this: what is the reason why someone over-explains? Why do they dominate a conversation or completely vanish? Why do they say yes when they really mean no? Fear of rejection, humiliation, abandonment, or failure. Nietzsche knew that people are motivated more by a deep fear of loss of status, of love, or of self-worth than by pure desire. So when you want to read someone, stop focusing on what they say they want and ask, what are they afraid of losing? The truth resides there. When someone is constantly criticizing others, it's a reflection. The person who mocks emotional people may be terrified of their own emotions. The person who demeans others for their appearance may be at war with their reflection. According to nature, judgment is almost never about the other person. Rather, it is about the self. Therefore, when you hear repeated criticisms, don't be distracted by the target. Instead, trace the line back to the speaker and identify the aspect of themselves that they are attempting to disown. Projection is not just a defense mechanism. It is also a confession. If you listen carefully, it will reveal exactly where someone's pain resides. False confidence hides behind guilt and a mask. You've probably met the kind of person who seems overly sure of themselves, always in control, and always composed. However, if you pay attention, you'll notice the tension in their jaw, the way they over-prepare, and their defensiveness under pressure. In leaders, teachers, preachers, and others who project certainty, Nietzsche observed this phenomenon. The man who is constantly confident is likely trying to hide his guilt, which could be something he regrets or a version of himself that he is trying to disprove. Real peace does not perform. So don't be intimidated if someone seems overly confident. Instead, be curious about what they are attempting to hide. Exaggeration reveals the hidden truth. This one is subtle but potent, and you can't unsee it once you see it. 10 people reveal themselves through exaggeration. Someone who always says, "I don't care what anyone thinks," probably cares a lot. Someone who says, "I'm always happy," is likely lying. Exaggeration is a tell. It's the ego attempting to silence doubt. We look for control in all aspects of our lives, our jobs, relationships, and routines. But some people are obsessed with it, which is a sign. 11 people who seek control are frequently afraid of inner chaos. Nietzsche clearly saw this. When the inner world is chaotic, the outer world must be obsessively managed. If someone micromanages every detail, if they can't handle, if they dominate others to feel powerful, it's not because they're strong, but because something inside them feels out of control. So instead of fearing the controlling person, see them for what they are. Someone terrified that the moment they let go, everything will fall apart. The more rigid the outside shell, the more fragile the inner self. This is one of Nietzsche's most haunting insights, and it's more applicable now than ever. 12, the louder the performance, the emptier the core. Look at social media. The endless look-at-me energy, the perfect poses, the constant updates, the curated identity. And Z didn't view this as strength. Rather, he saw it as desperation. When someone is constantly performing, it's because they don't think they'll be seen or loved without it. So they create noise, color, and drama. But the person who truly knows themselves doesn't need to be watched. they're already whole. So remember that when someone's life looks like a performance, it's a cry for help rather than a show of power. You're probably starting to feel it now. The shift when you enter a room and see that the patterns are louder than the words. When you see someone constantly interrupting and realize they're terrified of being forgotten. When you see someone boasting endlessly and sense their invisible wound. You're not reading minds. You're reading the mask, and Nayatsi gave you the flashlight. This is not just a skill. It's a responsibility, because once you learn to see people clearly, you can't unsee it, and you'll begin to understand that most people are suffering quietly behind polished smiles. When you see the child behind the critic, the fear behind the bully, the guilt behind the arrogance, you don't become weaker, you become unshakable. Want more? Wait until the final part of the video, because in part 3 we strip away the final layer. We'll explore how people's deepest childhood wounds show up in their adult personalities, how their envy, their silence, their need to be remembered all reveal their soul. You'll learn the final 6 truths that enable you to see people with absolute clarity. But more importantly, you'll understand yourself. By this point, something in you has shifted. You no longer see people as villains or victims, but as people trying to survive with masks that they didn't even choose. But we're not done yet, because behind every behavior is a belief, and behind every belief is a wound. This final part is about learning to recognize the soul, the deep story that hides beneath the surface of everyone you meet. Nicky's didn't just expose people's patterns, he illuminated where those patterns come from. Let's finish what we started. 13 people speak from pain, not logic. You might believe that people are rational and that they argue based on facts and make decisions based on reason, but Enzi held the opposite view. According to him, every logical argument has an emotional wound at its core. A person could say, "I don't believe in love. It's just a fantasy." However, pay attention to the fact that they are not expressing a fact. Rather, they are defending a pain people from their opinions by logically justifying those opinions. Therefore, when you want to understand someone's worldview, don't just ask what they believe. Ask what caused them pain, what terrified them, or what they never want to experience again. This changes everything. It shifts your focus from why are they saying this to what are they afraid of repeating. And all of a sudden, their views are no longer threats, but rather their defenses, and their arguments are no longer attacks, but rather shields. When you see that, you stop reacting and start understanding. The way someone responds to weakness reveals their power. If you want to truly see someone's character, don't watch how they treat powerful people. Instead, watch how they treat someone who can't fight back. NZEs believe that real strength is not demonstrated through domination, but through restraint. Someone who mocks vulnerability is afraid of their own. Someone who punishes errors is likely someone who wasn't allowed to make any. And someone who always wins, but leaves others bleeding, is still at war with themselves. But the person who can see weakness without judgment, who can sit with sadness without running away, and who can forgive what they could have punished, is someone who is no longer ruled by the past. They don't need to prove anything, because they've already won the inner war. So if you want to read someone, give them a moment where compassion is an option. What they do in that moment will show you who they are, not who they pretend to be. 15. When someone fears being forgotten, they seek attention. Have you ever met someone who always needs to be seen? Every room they enter, every story they tell, and every outfit they wear screams, "Notice." At first glance, it may seem like confidence, but Nenetsi recognized that the desire for attention frequently stems from a deeper fear. The fear of being invisible, of being erased, of living and dying without leaving a mark. As a result, people seek attention not out of vanity, but because they can't stand the silence. The neglected child grows into an adult who overcompensates and, rather than directly requesting love, demands it indirectly via drama or chaos. Therefore, when you meet someone who is excessive, don't be quick to judge. Instead, ask yourself what they are afraid of if they aren't enough. People often attack the people they admire, but feel they can never be. This is one of Nietzsche's most audacious truths, and one of the most difficult to acknowledge. Criticism is easier than admiration. That the person who tears down someone successful, who mocks someone confident, who gossips about someone free, isn't just mean, but is also in pain, Because seeing someone embody a part of you that you've given up on is a reminder of what you've lost. So instead of celebrating the other, we destroy them, but envy is just unspoken desire. It's the soul saying, I want that too, but I don't believe I'm allowed. People don't change. You've heard it stated, and people act out their childhood, not their beliefs. You get immune to small hatred if you can see this in others. You get free if you can see this in yourself. However, Nietzsche would say that people repeat the roles they were forced to play, the fears they were taught to carry, the dynamics they never escaped. A person who is never heard becomes someone who never listens. A person who is punished for expressing emotions becomes cold, logical, and detached. A person who had to earn love becomes someone who performs for affection even when it's toxic. People believe they are acting out of their beliefs, but they are actually just reenacting the past. Therefore, if you want to read someone, don't only look at who they are. Instead, ask who they had to be, because behavior is just biography, and behind every adult is a child still waiting to feel safe. 18. The patterns are a confession if you know how to listen. This is the last truth, and it alters everything. People don't always know how to express what hurts, but they will show you repeatedly through patterns. A person who ghosts when things get close, a person who overworks to avoid stillness, a person who flirts with everyone but connects with no one. These aren't random behaviors. They're confessions saying, this is how I protect myself. This is where I was hurt, they say. I'm afraid of this happening again, they state. According to NZ, you become powerful when you learn to listen deeply, not to words but to patterns. Because you can hear the truth before it is spoken, and because you stop personalizing, stop judging, and start understanding. You become a mirror rather than a weapon. More than any trick or tactic, this is what gives you power. You're not just reading people, you're remembering yourself. Now, think about how every truth we covered was about you, your own patterns, your own fears, and your own childhood script. Because the clearer you see others, the clearer you see yourself. This is just the beginning of learning to see what's hidden and becoming who you really are. Nzi didn't just want us to observe. He wanted us to awaken to the fact that everything we judge in others is something we carry, and everything we admire is something we long to embody. So if this video has spoken to you, or if you've recognized patterns in people or in yourself, don't keep it to yourself. Let's create something honest together in a world full of masks. And if this spoke to you, subscribe. This is just the beginning of learning to see what's hidden and becoming who you really are.